let's get into the things you did different, starting with budget.
Go ahead.
So when we went into our first budget, we had just hired Andy. Our manager, Brittany, was put in place. And in most governments, and you'll see this federally, statewide, and city and county, the budgeting technique has been called incremental budgeting.
Yes.
And incremental, for those that have never been exposed to it, is that you would just add the cost of living to the end of the line item, and that's how you would increase your budget every year.
Just whatever the cost of living jump was, everyone gets it.
Everyone gets it, whether it's payroll, whether it's operations and maintenance, whatever it is.
The park is going to get an extra 5.7% this year because everything. Okay,
so that's how you start to see ballooning costs.
Yeah.
The next thing that we did is we started to look at best practices and what business schools are teaching, and then start to incorporate them, those different practices. So in 2023's budget, back in 2022, what we started to do is examine line items by line item by line item, what the actual cost of the service was and what we weren't spending. And that year we saved $600,000.
Wow.
Okay. And that was a fraction of what we were seeing. We just wanted to see if it would work.
Department of Defense. Now's your moment to cue in, listen, just sit there and listen. Enjoy the show.
Then in 2023, as we talked with our county auditor and as with the staff, we went back to the table and we started to look at what's called priority budgeting. And you can only do this for 5 years. It's bad policy after 5 years.
Yeah.
But what it is that you take every department, and instead of just giving them the 4.3%, you go through and say, okay, what are your top priorities? And you see their top priorities with their bottom priorities and whether or not they need to be funded. And then you save the money from that.
So you're triaging priorities.
Every bit of it. So this year, we're still waiting for the numbers to come in from the final budget and the final spending, but we've saved north of $1 million. So in 2 years, we're up above 1.6 million.
And that's on a county level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That is a huge chunk of savings on a county level, on a population level this size.
I think part of it is the culture that was at the county, though.
And everyone, this is Ty Hoffman. Ty, introduce yourself real quick, and then we want to get you on there talking about this.
Ty Hoffman, District 3 for County Council. Thank you. What in talking with other elected officials and department heads and stuff, and the kind of the pattern that we were seeing with the budget is that there was an over budget and almost all of the budgets of around, I would say, somewhere between 15 to 22% on average.
And does that mean they're spending that much?
No, they were budgeting more than that.
Okay.
15 to 22%.
For the just in case.
For the just in case. And part of that was, as you talk to them and stuff, they're like, well, we never had the support of the previous commissioners. If we needed more money, they told us too bad most of the time. So they always budgeted in a cushion. And he said, no, we got to change that. And we got to get back to what you really need.
Yeah.
And we've told them, look, we'll have your back when something comes up, because that's inevitable. Life is going to happen at the county. It's going to happen in your house and stuff like that. You got to have a little money.
But if you've saved on all these other areas, you can absorb something.
Exactly.
Now they have a
so
rainy day fund.
We've tightened that way down, and we're still tightening that. But it's a different mindset and a different culture that had to be created within the county.
It's not a government mindset. It's like a free market mindset. For a successful business to run or a successful family, you're doing what those people do, not what the government does, where I'm just going to pad my budget. I'm going to spend it even though if I don't need it, just so I get the same one next year. And that's zero. That's a zero spend. Like, what is it called?
Well, it's called priority budgeting, at least in the literature.
Okay.
And the thing that's amazing about it is we're starting to see the savings, but in 2025's budget, we'll really see the savings because you keep studying it and you keep going through this process and you interject a culture of trust. And I think that was one thing that we noticed, at least in the organization, in the county organization, is employees didn't trust the commissioners or council, and council or commissioners didn't trust the employees. And when those two things occur, you can't have an honest discussion about projects. You can't do these other things. And I'm not saying all trust was gone. I'm just saying there just wasn't enough. And I think that as we showed that we'll put money away, and there has not been one emergency we have not funded. Not one. There's not been a staff member that is emergent that we haven't funded. We've changed over the way that we do insurance. That was the first year to help our employees have better health care. It's been funded.
And you did a study before all of that
All
to
of
make
this.
sure it's the right thing to do. You can afford it. And in the long run, it sets good precedent on how future councils can consider this situation.
Absolutely. I think that that's one of the most critical parts of how you look at anything is it's not, I think, because I can think a lot of things, but are my thoughts borne out in the data? And if they're not, then we have to change.
Yeah.
Are there other counties in the state that are doing this, or
I hope so. I don't know. I don't know. We've talked to them.
is there other government organizations that you know of that are doing this?
Do you want me to take it?
Yeah.
As we did, my job was to do a lot of the studying on this. Okay. And it is the best practice recommended from the National Association of Counties.
Okay.
Most people haven't adopted it. It is the best practice from the
I know
League-
the feds haven't.
No, the League of Cities and Towns nationally, it is the best practice, haven't adopted it. I know that when I was at Tooele City, and this is not a criticism because I didn't understand it, but we would do incremental budgeting because you would always think that the cost of service has gone up. Well, the cost of service may not have gone up in that particular area. And if it had gone up, then you should maybe have to fund it even at a higher rate. So you're costing yourself the time value of money if you're not doing it correctly.
You got a cute little dog right down here on the floor.
Yeah, she's
What's her name? Come here.
Dozer.
Dozer.
So
She identifies as a Great Dane, if you were wondering. Yeah, she thinks she is.
She's adorable.
Well,
Yeah.
with what you're saying, again, I keep getting smacked with logic, and coming out
There
of electeds is not common because government will mess everything up no matter what.
There's a huge gap for this to be spread around to propagate through all sectors. I mean, it's in our county, but is it moving into our cities?
I don't know because we're not part of their budgeting processes.
But would it be?
I think it would be advantageous to study
It'd be
it.
a help if the city guys started showing up to your meetings and asking questions. How do you get this budget tight? And then the state starts doing this. And, how would it be? How would it be if a cycle mess like California or New York could fix themselves so they're not taxing their people out of wealth?
You would have to have a logical, moral people willing to be wrong and willing to try something new and maybe get out of their comfort zone. These guys are ready to do all of this in the light of day in front of all their constituents. And that is what a lot of places are set not to do. They don't do it that way.
Well, and when you run for office, I think one of the beauties of our country and one of the difficulties of our country in a free election system is if you're running to be a career politician, you can't do this because it's not the culture that you want to instill in the organization.
Absolutely.
So you have to.
And you probably wouldn't get a lot of votes in those communities that want to have the coffers doled out for them.
Correct. And
This is kind of a rural mindset where rural wants to be free from government, wants to deal with the stuff themselves. And the urban community wants the government involved in their life, and they want those positive notions that government hand out, which would be a hard sell.
But maybe you're created something that is a hybrid for rural Utah to start. And again, your mindset and your thought process into this is about being conservative. It's about being transparent. I can tell you I know too many politicians, they say that, but that's not what they're about. They're about getting reelected, and they're about trying to do the best for their area. Money to the side. Like, money's no object. We're the government, we can afford it. If we have to, we raise taxes. Whereas you guys all came in with the thought that we're going to avoid raising taxes at all costs. We're going to make sure that we are tighten our belts, and we're going to use what we have. And if we do have to raise taxes, it will be the very last option. Correct. So I really appreciate that, because here's the thing. We went like 20 something years where no taxes were raised in this county. That's not healthy either, because that's when you get your big tax hike come up when they're desperate. And if they don't, just small increments as needed. But, and I'm not against taxes going up if there's no other option. But I like that I have a council right now that's saying, no, we'll find an option.
But I think you have to. And the hardest part for elected leaders is, am I not going to get reelected, or am I? And that's not a mindset you can walk in with. And, I think you have to be willing to say you're wrong. We were in budget in 2022 for the 2023 budget, and we were sitting in a meeting, and I appreciated our county recorder, Jerry Houghton. I was dead set against what he was asking for. I completely dead set, because I'm a fiscal conservative, and I came from that. My father was that way. And he presented a set of facts that I had never considered. And as soon as they were presented, I went, okay, let's change course.
This makes sense.
Because you have to be willing to say you're wrong.
And that's hard.
And that really is.
It's really hard, especially when you're in front of a lot of people that are watching. That's character.
My wife will tell you it's hard for me in front of one.
No.
So to change.
So step up into government was right outside of your wheelhouse.
Yeah. So
I'm going to go hand her off.
David Weiss wants to know, can our government buy Bitcoin and save it as our rainy day fund? Does our government have any interest in digital currency, or is it even a thought yet?
I don't even know if that's in the state code, that if we could do that. So much of what we have to do is
it's law
determined by state law, and I don't know the answer to that.
the state law right now doesn't allow us to buy
I
Bitcoin.
didn't think it did.
So we have certain funds that we can invest in that are protected. There's a discussion today on a federal level of allowing some different forms of investment on Wall Street, of county pensions going into other areas. And it's scary, dangerous. And I don't think Dave's question is a bad question. I think that we're early on in this, and we need to make sure that whatever we do at the end of the day protects the county's citizens' tax dollars.
Well, and it's new. And until the federal government has something in line, or Utah decides as a state what we're going to do, I get that, because a lot of your constituents aren't going to know what Bitcoin is, and it's going to terrify them that you're putting money in something that is a market that can go up and down, and it's not guaranteed. Not that our cash value is guaranteed, but at least there's dollars you make, dollars you have to spend, line item items. It's not a piece of something like a Bitcoin.
When I, one thing that I think is important is that we budget every year. Hopefully we're making money on what we're saving.
Sure.
That's just wise. This year it's called the PTIF account. It's a public account that we hold our money in. We made $3 million over what we budgeted. It was a safe investment.
That's never anything ever that happens in local government, or at least where they're telling you.
Correct.
You could easily just say, we did all right. And by the way, when this project I want to do comes up, I'm not going to raise your taxes because I've saved money over here. No, you're saying our decisions created an opportunity that actually gave us a return.
Which means when the pool breaks and has to be ripped out, you're nervous, but you have an opportunity to fix it. And I love the word opportunity. I think that too often when we talk about risk and problems, we don't see them as opportunities.
Absolutely.
And that this has been a great opportunity for us to not only invest wisely, but when we went, and this was shared on your show last week, that we received the AA Bond Plus rating.
Yeah.
And it's because of the financial management of our county. Our treasurer does a fantastic job on the investment end. Our auditor does a fantastic job. Our manager does a fantastic job following where the money's going and how it's being spent. And hopefully we as a council are following our own principles and our own policies.
I would say
We try to.
if we got a $3 million investment growth, you guys are doing fine.